All right, Improvisation Center's back again with another project, bootleg project. I don't know, I came up with an idea anyway for this old electric lawnmower that nobody seems to want to buy it because, well, it's old and the battery is crap. And as a matter of fact, the battery is actually a remake of my own creation using some cheap lead acid batteries because I didn't want to spend the money to buy the factory battery that goes in this thing. So anyway, whatever. Nobody wants to buy this thing, and rather than throw it out, because technically it's still a perfectly good running machine. So I had an idea. Why not take this electric lawnmower that's a 36 volt lawnmower, take a couple of these aftermarket battery clips that utilize the batteries that go with the hyper tough power tools that I use, and wire it up to this thing and not stop there. Even though I could technically resurrect this lawnmower and make it a lawnmower again using different batteries, since there's a slew of different lithium ion batteries out there, from adapter connectors for power tool lithium batteries all the way to dedicated battery packs of different voltages. My idea is going to be to essentially cut probably the front half of this thing off and expose 2/3 to half of the cutting area and turn this thing into sort of a bush hog, where I could use it to go into weed patches in areas with some relatively thick brush and rough terrain where a regular push mower or zero turn can't get into, and it's too much area to do with a regular weed eater. So yeah, I just have to look at how this thing is put together to see how I'm gonna actually do this. Like I said, this is gonna be more or less a bootleg project because I'm shooting from the hip every step of the way with this one, because what do I have to lose? This thing's more or less junk anyway. Nobody wants it. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started with that as I figure things out, and you'll get to see it right here. Okay, in the middle of the disassembly of this thing, as usual, we always run into some issues, especially with the way these bodies are put together and the way the bolt holes are hidden in spots, and how some of this stuff, especially in the case of this machine, are rusted out. It makes it a little difficult to take things apart. So of course that's where the power tools come in for chopping things up. And like in the case of the side exhaust chute here, I had to chop that off because the screws were rusted. But I'm probably going to patch that up with some sheet metal, at least what's left of the body, after I get through chopping the front part of it off. Also took the front wheels off. That little bar right there was actually linked to the rear wheels, so when you adjust the height, it adjusts all of them at one shot. And I had to do some prying and stuff to get the tire off so I could access the retaining clips to actually get the wheel off and get the bar off and everything. So yeah, I'm just going ahead tearing stuff up on here. Even this thing, this switch here, pulled the switch apart so I could look inside to see how it's put together in here, and more than likely I'm gonna have to do some careful cutting of the cover because I don't want to chop up any wires or damage the circuit board that's in here that controls this thing. So I'm going to continue to carefully disassemble and cut into this thing. Alright, as I said, we did some chopping, and there's the cover. As you can see, it has been removed. I did take time to take this little control module right here, which was sitting right here, and move it over here, because what's going to come up next is another chop straight across here, or somewhat straight across there, but more or less I'm taking this front third off of the machine in order to open it up so the cutting area will be exposed to open air to accomplish what I set out to accomplish, which is chop weeds. So gonna do some more eyeballing and everything, look and see how I want to do this, and then start chopping once again. Alright, did another chop, and as you can see, this thing is missing the front third of the machine. But as you can also see, a good part of the blade is sticking out, and this is what we're looking for as far as chopping up weeds and brush. Being able to walk right into a patch of weeds and allow that blade to do its job of chopping. Now, I try to do as straight of a cut as possible and go around the contours of this motor base area here and to the other side. Now, I also went ahead and took the original cover and marked some lines because I'm going to cut this cover, and then I'm going to kind of do my own little bootleg cover to cover the rest of this up and be sort of slim, low profile, whatever. I'll be using the hot glue gun to help do that. So while that heats up, I'm going to cut that cover up and start doing some more fitting and test fitting and see how I'm going to put this together. Just like I said, I'm shooting from the hip at every turn on this thing. So the work continues. Alright, on the cover, I did a little more chopping. As you can see, I tried my best. I'm probably going to trim it some more, but did my best here to have like a bit of an angle in right here. And this cover is going to be covered by this opening. I mean, it's going to be covered by this sheet metal here once I cut it out and bend the tabs and drill some little holes for screws to hold it down. But I was able to capitalize on some designs of the body where, even though these look like bolt holes, they were actually just solid mold points or some, I don't know. But anyway, when I drilled through them, they made it up just right where I could put screws through to hold the cover down, so I didn't have to worry about gluing anything down. There's a regular bolt right there, or screw, that I use in order to hold it down on that end. So really this cover is secured, and even after I put the metal on there, if I needed to, I could take the whole cover off if I needed to do something in here. This little cover here with the switch, or used to have a switch, I actually went ahead and hot glued that and used the one bolt or screw right there to hold it on. So this whole thing is just about done. I do have to cut one more piece of sheet metal to go over this point right here, and with that, this thing will be done. So we continue. Okay, we cut out the sheet metal panel for the front and drilled holes at different points, especially with these tabs here, and secured the whole thing in place. So as you can see, the front of the thing is covered up to keep the internals protected, and I'm going to come over the top of this along these different seams with some hot glue to further seal it up and try to clean it up later on, because I'm probably going to paint this whole thing. But all along here, same thing. Now the only other thing left to do is cut a piece of sheet metal to go over this point right here and close this in. That way we can go ahead and get ready to write this thing off. Alrighty then, I changed my mind. Again, shooting from the hip. Instead of trying to put a piece of sheet metal over this old exhaust port here for grass, I just chopped the rest of that plastic off and left the sides open, and then did the same thing on that side by cutting that plastic out. And the reason behind that is, when this thing is being used and it's being moved around, being pushed into weeds and all, anything that gets pushed down, if it even so much as comes close to this area, it's going to get chopped up on the sides, on the front. So basically I just created a good extra cutting space on the sides all the way around, you know, about 180-degree sweep around the front, with the initial cutting starting in the front where the blade protrudes out, and the sides being where it'll finish off. Now, on a final note, we still have to do our battery hookup here, and that'll be where the battery clips come into play. That battery clips right there. But on a final note, as far as the body here, I know there's always going to be one person that's Mr. OSHA and is going to say that this is a very dangerous piece of equipment. Well, all powered equipment is dangerous to some degree if it's in the hands of idiots. So word to the wise, don't stand in front of this thing if I'm using it, because you might lose a foot. So yeah, basically public service announcement with this type of hardware, or any bush hog for that matter. If you stand in front of a running bush hog that's got blades or heavy strings or whatever, you're going to lose a foot. So I'm going to get the battery clips hooked up and we will be done. Okay, the battery clips, I got them clipped together with some crimp terminals on the ends. I actually took the old battery plug apart that went in there. It had loop terminals, and I went ahead and drilled a hole in the side of the old battery compartment and routed these two the power cables through that hole to have them in a better position to be able to hook it up to the battery clips here. And we're going to go ahead and get that soldered together, or not soldered, crimped together, and we should pretty much be done. Alright, ran into a small problem, well, small and big. After plugging the batteries up to this thing and trying the unit out, didn't get any action. So I put the meter on the output leads from our double battery pack and only got 20 volts. So what I'm guessing is these batteries, like pretty much all these lithium battery packs that you see commercially, are regulated internally by some electronics, and probably have some feedback circuit in the power tool that they power to tell the battery when to output a certain amount of voltage. Those batteries have on there, it says 20 volts max, which means that they don't initially put out 20 volts from the start. The electronics, as stated, will go ahead and actually regulate the battery's output to put out 20 volts to power the tool. And because we're doing pretty much a bootleg setup, those electronics do not exist in this tool, so the batteries really don't know what the heck to put out. So while that might be a setback, our only other solution there is going to be to buy one of the commercially made generic battery packs that you can find online that are made at different voltages, like 12, 24, 36, 48 volts, whatever, for different applications. And since this is a 36 volt machine, I could go ahead and just locate a 36 volt lithium battery pack of a decent enough amperage to be comparable to the original battery, which is about 4 amp hours. So I will get one of those battery packs, because those battery packs are actually set up to just put the power out completely. Whatever the voltage is, that's what comes out. I bought some of those before for some 12 volt applications and they work perfectly. So I'm sure 36 volt or 24 volt, any other voltage version of those battery packs will work just as fine too. So for the time being, this little project is postponed. It's put on hold until I get that battery pack. But all in all, the project is done. I just need to, after I get that battery, rewire everything, and then we can get back to testing this thing out.